Have you ever looked at something broken and wondered if it could ever be whole again? A shattered vase, a forgotten promise, a life that has lost its way. We often think that what is done forever. But what if it isn't? The Book of Chronicles is that story. It is more than just a history lesson. It is a letter of hope, written to a people sitting in the ruins of their own lives. This ancient book is often overlooked. We see long lists of names and familiar tales, but we must look closer. Imagine a generation born in a foreign land. They only knew stories of a glorious past they had never seen. Chronicles was written for them. It was a reminder that God had not forgotten them. The writer of Chronicles retells the past with a purpose. He is not just recording facts. He shows a God who is faithful, even when his people are not. He highlights the power of worship to heal a broken community. This is not a story about perfect people. It is a story about a perfect God who works through imperfect lives. So let us journey together into this book. It speaks to the parts of us that feel lost, broken, or forgotten. It offers a fresh perspective on failure and forgiveness. It shows us that even after the deepest loss, a new beginning is always waiting. The Book of Chronicles is a testament to the God who never gives up on his people. It is a promise that no matter how far we have fallen, there is always a way back home. It is a story for the broken, and in it, we find our own hope for restoration. Picture a city. Not a bustling metropolis full of life and sound, but a city of ghosts. This was Jerusalem after the exile. The once mighty walls were piles of stone and dust. The wind whistled through the empty shells of homes where families once laughed and prayed. This was not just the destruction of buildings. It was the death of a dream. The people who returned walked through the ruins of their own history. They were a scattered few, haunted by the memory of what their nation used to be. The grand temple, the very heart of their faith, was gone. It was just a memory. How could they worship? How could they find God when his house was a pile of rubble? This was the world into which the Book of Chronicles was born. It was written for a people drowning in despair. They needed more than just comfort. They needed a reason to believe again. The writer of Chronicles understood this deep ache. He knew that simply telling them to have faith was not enough. He had to show them. He had to reach back into their collective memory and pull out the threads of hope. He had to remind them of who they were, and more importantly, who their God was. He needed to retell their history in a way that would ignite a flicker of hope in their weary souls. He had to show them that even in the dust of Jerusalem, God was planting the seeds of a new beginning. The story was not about the ruins, but about the rebuilding that was to come. The first 9 chapters of Chronicles can seem daunting. They are filled with long lists of names. But for the people returning from exile, these names were everything. They were a lifeline. Each name was a thread in a grand tapestry, connecting them to a story much bigger than their own suffering. These lists were not just about who was related to whom. They were a powerful declaration from God. I remember you. Imagine hearing your family's name read aloud, a name you thought was lost to history. In a world that had forgotten them, God had not. He remembered every single person. The genealogies were proof that they still belonged. They were not a scattered, nameless people. They were the children of a covenant. They had a history, an identity, and a place in God's plan. These names were a quiet rebellion against despair, a statement that their story mattered. These lists did more than just connect the people to their past. They also organized them for the future. They showed who belonged to which tribe, who were the priests, and who were the Levites. This was a practical guide for rebuilding their community. It was a blueprint for restoring worship. Most importantly, these names point to a God who is intimately involved in the lives of his people. For the returning exiles, this was a source of immense comfort and courage. It gave them the strength to believe that if God remembered their names, he would surely remember his promises to them. When we think of King David, we often think of a warrior, a giant slayer, a powerful king who united a nation. But the writer of Chronicles wants us to see a different side of David. He shows us David the worshiper. More than anything, David wanted to build a house for God, a permanent place for the Ark of the Covenant. God told David that he would not be the one to build the temple. His son, a man of peace, would be the builder. For many, this would have been a crushing disappointment. But not for David. If he could not build the temple, he would do everything in his power to prepare for it. He dedicated his life to gathering the materials. He collected gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and precious stones. David's preparation was an incredible act of faith. He was building for a future he would never see. This is the heart of true worship. It is not about what we get, it is about what we give. David's work was not in vain. He was laying the foundation not just with stone and gold but with his own unwavering faith. This focus on David's preparation was a powerful message for the returning exiles. They too were in a time of preparation. They were laying the foundation for a future they could not yet see clearly. Like David, they were called to be faithful with what they had, right where they were. David's story told them that faithfulness in the small things, in the preparation, is just as important as the final grand achievement. The day finally arrived. Solomon, David's son, had completed the temple. It was a magnificent structure, built with the finest materials and the greatest skill. But honestly, it was still just a building, a beautiful, empty shell. The real question was, would God come? Would his presence fill this house as it had filled the tabernacle in the wilderness? All of Israel gathered. The priests brought the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, into the most holy place. Then, Solomon prayed. He stood before the people and dedicated the temple to God. His prayer was not about the beauty of the building, it was about the faithfulness of God. He asked God to hear the prayers of his people when they turned toward this place. As Solomon finished his prayer, something incredible happened. Fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifices on the altar, and the glory of the Lord, a brilliant, shining cloud, filled the temple. God had answered. He had come to dwell among his people. This was not just a quiet approval, it was a thunderous declaration. This is my house, I am here. The people fell on their faces and worshipped, overwhelmed by the tangible presence of their God. For the generation rebuilding the second, much smaller temple, this story was a vital reminder. It reminded them of the power of true worship. It showed them that the goal was not just to construct a building but to create a space where God's glory could dwell. The story of the temple's dedication is a high point in Israel's history. It was a moment of perfect harmony between God and his people, but sadly, it did not last. The Book of Chronicles does not shy away from the painful truth. After Solomon, a long line of kings followed. Some were good. They followed the ways of David and led the people in faithful worship. But many were not. They forgot the God who had filled the temple with his glory. The decline was gradual at first. A little compromise here, a small idol there. The kings began to worship other gods, building high places for pagan rituals. The vibrant worship that had once defined them was replaced by empty rituals or outright idolatry. The temple, once the center of their national life, was neglected and even defiled. The presence of God did not leave all at once. It was a slow fade, driven by the persistent unfaithfulness of the kings and the people. This part of the story is a somber warning. It shows what happens when a nation forgets its first love. As the people turned from God, their society began to crumble. Alliances with foreign nations failed. The kingdom split in two. The very fabric of their community unraveled, because they had cut themselves off from their source of life. Ultimately, this long, slow fade led to the inevitable. The Babylonians came. They burned the magnificent temple of Solomon to the ground. They tore down the walls of Jerusalem, and they carried the people away into exile. The story could have ended there, in the ashes of Jerusalem, in the despair of exile. Many historical accounts would have concluded with the fall of the kingdom, but the writer of Chronicles does not end there. After detailing the destruction and the reasons for it, after leading the reader to the very edge of hopelessness, he adds a final, crucial postscript. It is just 2 verses, but in those 2 verses, everything changes. The book fast-forwards through the 70 years of exile, and then it gives us a whisper of hope. It is a decree from a foreign king, Cyrus of Persia. He had conquered Babylon, and now, moved by the Spirit of God, he makes a proclamation. He declares that the God of heaven has given him all the kingdoms of the earth, and this God has appointed him to build a temple for him in Jerusalem. It is a stunning reversal. The one who has the power to keep them in exile is the one who is sending them home. God is at work, even through a pagan king. The decree is specific. It is a direct call to action. King Cyrus says, "Any of his people among you may go up, and may the Lord his God be with him." This is the permission they had been waiting for. The dream that had seemed dead was suddenly alive again. The message of Chronicles resonates far beyond the ancient world. It speaks directly to us today. We all face our own exiles. We all have moments when our dreams lie in ruins. It might be a personal failure, a broken relationship, a lost job, or a crisis of faith. We all know what it feels like to sit in the dust of what used to be and wonder if we will ever be whole again. The book teaches us a profound lesson about faithfulness in the present. Like David preparing for a temple he would never see, we are called to build for a future that is not yet clear. Our small acts of faith and obedience today are the building blocks of tomorrow's restoration. We are not always called to see the finished product. We are simply called to be faithful with the work in front of us. Worship is at the heart of this rebuilding process. For the exiles, rebuilding the temple was their first priority. It was not about having a fancy building. It was about recentering their lives on God. Worship is what restores our perspective. It reminds us that our story is part of a much larger divine narrative. When we worship, we declare that God is bigger than our failures, bigger than our fears, and bigger than our circumstances. It is in worship that we find the strength to pick up the broken pieces and start again. It is the act of turning our faces back toward the God who promises to be with us. In the end, the Book of Chronicles is a grand portrait of God. It shows us his character in stunning detail. He is the God who remembers. From the first name in the genealogy to the last soul in exile, no one is forgotten. He is the God who keeps his promises. Even when generations pass and his people are unfaithful, his covenant word stands firm. He is the God whose presence is powerful. His glory fills the temple, a tangible sign of his desire to dwell with us. But above all, Chronicles reveals him as the God who restores. This is the ultimate message of hope that echoes through every chapter. God does not abandon his people in their failure. He does not leave them in the ruins. He makes a way back. He moves the heart of a foreign king. He issues a decree of freedom. He calls them home. He invites them to rebuild. This is who our God is. He is not a God of condemnation, but a God of second chances. He is a master at taking the rubble of our lives and building something new and beautiful from it. His specialty is restoration. Think about your own life, the places that feel broken, the dreams that have died. The Book of Chronicles speaks into that space. It whispers that your story is not over. The God who called Israel out of exile is calling to you. He is offering you a way back to hope. He is inviting you to participate in the rebuilding of your own life, with his strength and his grace as your foundation. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.